My name is Tom Virgin. I was born and raised in the suburbs of Detroit. My first two childhoods were in Michigan, and all the other childhoods after that have been in South Florida, in Boca for 20 years, and in Miami for 30 years plus. And I'm a printmaker, a printer, and a troublemaker, and I make books.
You definitely make books. First of all, I have to congratulate you. Congratulations are in order because two of your books are now at the Met.
Yes.
What led to this? You have to tell me. Congratulations. That's so amazing.
Some people think there's an evil empire right now at Oolite Arts, but Oolite Arts started 40 years ago, and it was Art Center, South Florida. And I started teaching in Miami Beach at Beach High when Oolite Arts was already, or when Art Center, South Florida was already a thing. So it was a place where I went and where the kids went to take classes. So I've known those guys forever. Oolite is the most current iteration, and Oolite Arts actually, oops.
This is real. This is real life.
My sister calls me every single day, and I love it. They changed the way they were doing business in some ways, but they are the ones who made it possible for those books to go in the Met. They started buying work from Miami artists for the Oolite Arts collection, and they bought two of my books. And when they bought two of my books, one of the board members, Little Haiti, saw my books and he said, "I like those books. I want to buy them too." And Lynn's collection is at the Met. And so when Lynn bought the books along with Oolite, it was a double header, and the books went to the Met. And this was long before controversy. And that was how the books entered the Met. And then they had to, check them out and do all the other things they do. But yeah, and Lynn also, unbeknownst to me, was the guy who was responsible for Casa Lynn during Art Basel all those years ago. Chambers was involved. Some of my students were involved. So he's been an active force in my life, and I didn't even know. So he's kind of a great guy.
What a world.
Yeah.
And you've just closed public education at Oolite. It was an exhibition. It was last month.
Yeah.
How did that turn out?
Well, I was kind of in the hot seat a little bit, but I work with everybody. And there was a little piece of everybody there. Many of the neighbors who live in that neighborhood posted stuff on their feeds, Facebook, Instagram, and other stuff. And so despite like kind of a low-key presentation, I had lots of great reviews. Kevin Arrow told me, this is my favorite one I've seen. And not necessarily the art specifically, but that it's so rich. I've been walking by it for months, and every time I go there, I see something else. So the whole window was kind of like a big book, but it was a big book of a lot of people.
Yeah. How did that idea come about? Because I know you've been working with what's going on with the banned books.
Yeah, well, I make books. I don't ban books. I mean, I print about banned books.
Yes.
But I also print books. So the last thing I want to do is get rid of books. I'm making books. I had a library in my art room all the years that I was teaching. And I had when I first started teaching, the state of Florida, on the federal government's command, it made kids read 40 minutes a day, every day in the first period class. And so I got to read every morning, and I put together a school library for me, and I had paperbacks. I had everything from Goosebumps to Cormac McCarthy. And the kids didn't always want to read. And the kids who are really slick would say, "Virgin, what are you reading today?" And so I would read to them from Cormac McCarthy. And he's a very profoundly educated and literate man, but he says things with words that, were new to me sometimes.
Yeah.
But me reading to them as someone who reads all the time was just like me talking. So despite the fact that I talk way too much, they heard things that they would never heard otherwise. So they loved it when I read to them.
Yeah.
I had a teacher read Charlotte's Web to me when I was probably in first grade. I don't know how old I was, but I vividly remember. And I made my mom go out and buy the book after a week because I didn't want to wait every day for more Charlotte's Web.
I felt the same way about Judy Blume.
Yeah. And so I gave my granddaughter Charlotte's Web when she was about 6. And I haven't seen it. I haven't seen her very much lately. And I was over there the other day and I saw the copy of Charlotte's Web on the bar in the house. And it was beat to rags. And I looked at her and I said, "That's really a good book, isn't it?" And she goes, "It's so sad."
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about the history of Extra Virgin Press? How'd you get that started?
Extra Virgin Press started with a Night Arts Challenge grant.
Mm-hmm.
And I received the Night Arts Challenge grant a few weeks after my oldest son died. So it was a convergence of everything that you could ever imagine. But within a few weeks, Brooke and Tyler asked me, would I be interested in bringing it here? Mm-hmm. And, this was the kids' playground.
Yes.
They have contemporary art gallery over there. They have exile books in the middle. They work with everybody everywhere into the future. And I have what used to be the kids' playroom, and it lives more or less in the middle of the last century.
Yeah. You've been here for how long?
I've been here 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah. 8, maybe going on 9. And this used to be a grocery store, the whole building. And it also used to be very much Little Haiti, but there's a lot of changes in the neighborhood.
You've seen a lot of changes in the neighborhood.
Yeah. And because I do stuff in the neighborhood, that stuff is on the walls too.
Yeah. Have you faced any challenges when getting it started?
Well, when I was teaching full time,
you were an educator, that's right.
Yeah, in a public school, and I think towards the end less adjunct teaching.
Yeah.
But I was working at Beach High for the second time, and I was in school all day, and then I came here to work after that. So there was no real issues other than that I was just me, but I did have minions. And I did go work with everybody who asked. I'd go to the book fair. I'd go to Little Haiti Book Festival. I did stuff for Pam. And in the beginning, they would give me a small honorarium, but I was able to bring other printers with me. So Nick Gilmore, Russell Beans, Miggs Mendoza, my kids who are my students who are still in school, but they got to go to all these things and hang out. And there was never a need for everybody to be on a press at the same time. Mm-hmm. So they kind of got to get into that whole museum thing. When I first started teaching, Pam started their kids program, their teen program, the Teen Council. And one of the kids who was in the program from the beginning, more or less because I told her, "You like art, you should be doing this." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Because you guys are going to be the next ones that are going to that museum." So she came to me months later and says, "Virgin, I got a check." And I said, "What for?" She said, "For the Perez Art Museum program." And I said, "I told you." And they're very much recognizing that the future of art museums is not going to be the stuff that they started with. It's going to be stuff that they're buying now, mm-hmm. and stuff that they're hearing about from kids. So education goes 2 ways. You go to school and teach, and if you pay attention, all those kids teach you too.
Yeah. What does a typical day look like for you when you come to work? Well, is there any rituals? How do you make the day go by? Do you handle project by project? You just blast music?
It's I always have music going, always. Yeah. I had to turn it off to do this. I usually go out and sweep the sidewalk because across the street there's a Botanica, when I
Yes,
first
I saw
started.
that.
And Miss Marie would sweep the sidewalk every morning. And she was here when I got here, and she was still here when I left. But I had to go teach school the next day. But she's a role model for me. And I would go in that store, and it was like being on another planet, not even another world or another community. And she had stuff in her store that my grandmother would buy at the 5 and dime when I was a little kid. And so I
Really?
bought some of that stuff just because it reminded me of things that were in my life then that kind of aren't so much in my life now, but they're still accessible.
Mhm.
So, and I generally uh, come in, and if I have printing to do, that's always my first shot. If I have to work on the computer, um, that usually takes place later in the day. But I often have to make plates on the computer. So not everything I make comes from wood type or linoleum cuts or things like that. When I started printing here, I called myself a printmaker. And I have a dear friend named Amos Kennedy who told me I'm a printer. Uh, I'm not a printmaker. And I laughed. And I respect his articulate expression of what he does because he prints for many people.
Yeah.
And I've fallen into that same. Uh,
Are you both? Are you
I
printer or printmaker?
I do both, but I mean I'm a printer. I print for me.
Mhm.
I print with other people, and I also print for other people, and I print for other people who don't have a voice.
Yeah.
Or I print for kids because if I print something this big, it's like you and me talking. It might be 5 or 6 lines of type, but the kids will read 5 or 6 lines of type and they'll get something from it. And it's a gateway drug to more reading.
Yeah.
And I've been a bookworm longer than anything.
Yeah.
So if I'm making a book, I come in, I know what I'm doing, I set it up, I test it, I make sure everything's the way it's supposed to be, and then I print. More often, everything's not the way it's supposed to be, and I have to fix some things, or someone says, can you do this? Or can I come by? Or someone just stops in. And I like that this place is a place where people who want things, whether it's information or a network or an idea or to go through the library that I have or just hang out, it's kind of like when I was in school, there was always kids in my room, always. And when anything ever happened crazy in school, they came to my room to talk about it because it was kind of a safe space. I didn't go out of my way to make it a safe space, but I didn't start teaching until I was 40. So, and school was always my favorite place. And I kind of felt like I wanted to be like that for everybody.
Yeah.
And plus, I had kids from all over the world. Every dictator on the planet sent refugees and kids into my room. And Miami-Dade County Public Schools said, those are your kids. Take care of them. And I did.
What was your favorite part about teaching?
Having kids teach me.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, like
That's not like amazing.
I was already 40, so I thought I knew things by then. And
They surprise you.
when they tell you things that you don't know, they shared music with me. They told me stories. Around about 2010, they said, Virgin, this chocolate and vanilla thing, that's out the window. It's 31 flavors. Get over it.
Yeah.
And I kind of like always exhibited their work the same as I would mine. And I only told them if I can't show the principle, then I can't show the work. And that was the only rule I had because I knew that there was a gate and I didn't want to make trouble for school.
Mm-hmm.
School was the most important thing in my life, continues to be the most important thing in my life, except for it doesn't look like the public school that I went to. And I didn't take art in public school. I had it in, I think, the 7th grade. And somebody said something to me who was a teacher. I don't know, even remember if it was a man or a woman. But whatever they said, I didn't like it. And I never took art again in school.
What?
I took shop. I took metal shop and wood shop. And I did take a class with the guy who was teaching photography, but it was like not an art class. And that was the last semester of my senior year.
So you weren't taking art classes. When did you know you wanted to be an artist?
When I was 5.
You knew that. You knew that.
I didn't know what an artist was, but I was already making things. I was making books at 5.
At 5?
Well, they were crummy books. And my grandson is making books. So, and my son,
That it's in the blood.
all my boys told me, Dad, it skips a generation. And, you know, like, I used to tell them they were full of shit, but now I realize they were right. And I remind them every time I go over there.
What did you want to be? You didn't know you would be an artist.
I didn't know. I still don't know what I want to be. I mean, I am what I want to be.
Yeah.
I'm a teacher. I'm an artist. I make books. I like being part of a community.
Mm-hmm.
I network. I bring people together who don't necessarily know each other. I like to travel. School is also a college degree. But when you travel and you live somewhere for a month and you're in a different place, that's the same as college. So when I went to college, my dad said, you can't take art. So I took journalism because I was always writing and I was on the yearbook. And my friends were on the newspaper. And I didn't want to be a journalist, but I did take judo, karate, fencing. I took an independent study on William Faulkner. I did all this as a freshman in college. And I worked in the mornings, early, making bagels because the store that made bagels in Detroit opened a new bagel store in East Lansing, Michigan, at Michigan State.
Yeah.
So I kind of I had a full plate, but I really wanted to take art. And so at the end of the year, I asked my dad if I can take art again, and he said no. And so I changed to advertising, and I really didn't like advertising. And my new roommate knew all the guys who were older than me, and I took a lot more classes. I took accounting. I took economics. I mean, I took classes that were responsible, but I didn't have a plan on what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of my sophomore year, I asked my dad again if I could go to school for art. And I applied to York University in Toronto.
Uh-huh.
And they said yes, and my dad said no. So me and my girlfriend and her twin sister and her twin sister's boyfriend got in the Volkswagen van, and we traveled for probably 3 or 4 months. And I was the only one in the car that didn't know that we were looking at ski areas and that Dave was going to ski for a season for free and teach, and they were going back to Michigan. Meanwhile, my parents moved to Florida. So at the end of ski season, the other 3 went back to Michigan, and I had to hitch a ride to Florida. And I moved to Florida and lived in my parents' garage. It was a grandfather apartment. I mean, it wasn't like the car was there and the oil was on the floor. But, and I had a series of crummy jobs and went back to Michigan thinking, okay, I'm going to get my degree. But I was no longer an in-state student. So I had to work for a year to come back. I lived with my old college roommate, and it was another learning experience. So when I came back, I took classes one at a time, and I worked for my father, who, when he came to Florida, he bought a lawn company, and I became a gardener. And I did lawn and ornamental spraying. And when I got married, I was a gardener. I had 3 kids in the audience when I finally graduated in 1989, having started in 72. And then I got my teaching certificate. I had 3 kids, and my wife said, well, we're going to get separated. So I went to all the schools in Florida to see who had the best master's program. And the University of Miami was the closest one to my kids.
Yeah.
And the other schools they had kind of more active programs, but I could go back and forth to see the kids at Miami. And so I went to the University of Miami, and that's when I came here in 1992.
That's right, because
And
you were
I'm
part of the Mafia.
UMR Mafia, and everyone made fun of me for saying that. But at the time, there was only one MFA program in Miami, and if you wanted to teach college, you needed an MFA.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
So these days, I don't know what to tell kids because the cost of education is so high. I worry.
Yeah, it's astronomical.
But still, I mean, I sent many kids to New World, and the kids who went to New World also could get a free master's at the University of Florida.
Yeah.
So even though I was in a public high school, I was working with all the other schools. I also taught adjunct. I taught adjunct when I was at UM. I did the Art After Dark. I taught in every neighborhood in Miami, almost every summer until I started going to residencies. And the kid who did this, Dadeware, has a shirt now, and it has, and I'm using big quotes here, bad neighborhoods. Yeah. He made a shirt with all the bad neighborhoods on it. And I recently visited him again. I see him pretty often. And like 3/4 of the neighborhoods were neighborhoods that I taught in because it was summer programs, it was kids at risk and all this other stuff. But they weren't bad neighborhoods to me. They were good kids. I really love those kids. And again, you know, your education isn't what you want. Your education is what you learn. And so those kids taught me things that made it possible for me to go to all those neighborhoods too, and to understand some of the things that were going on a long time ago. So, and I'm grateful for that. I've always been a bookworm. I've always read widely. Another thing that I did when I went to all these residencies was meet a lot of writers. So all the people that were involved in this whole progression are the part that I like the best. But it came to me through books. It came to me through making books. It came to me through making books with writers, making broadsheets with writers. There's a whole group of 113 or something prints at Miami-Dade Public Library in their collection of sweat broadsheets that Brian Reedy and me, Carol Todaro, Rosemary Chirlone, Michael Heddick, a bunch of people got together and said, let's do this. And we did. And we did it from 2008 to 2012. It traveled around the country, and it's in several collections now. But that working with other people and doing what I do best with doing what they do best made these relationships that still go on.
You work with a lot of artists. What are some of your favorite collaborations?
Whatever one I'm working on now is always
really. It's always your favorite.
Well, I mean, I'm making a book with Campbell McGrath.
Yeah.
If you've ever heard Campbell McGrath read, you're immersed in language on a level that you're immersed when you look at one of Darby's big paintings, or when you go to the museum in New York City and see Monet's water lilies laid out around you like a whole nother world. These are things that I have always loved and have always been a part of me. But I was not educated in those fields. I was drawn to those fields. My mom had a Monet print in the dining room, but it wasn't a real Monet. It was something that she got at Kmart. And she got a nice frame for it. But, you know, I grew up with Monet in that room.
Yeah.
I didn't know the difference between a reproduction. And I grew up in Detroit.
It still has the same effect with you.
And when I went to DIA, Detroit Art Institute, and saw the Diego Rivera murals, and I grew up in Detroit, and I bought gas at 19 cents a gallon, and I got to drive with people who had hot muscle cars and stuff. All those things came together in a world that was poetry, that was art, that was like a whole world, aside from just being somebody walking around on the sidewalk.
Yeah. What do you envision for the future of Extrovergent Press? What do you think?
Well, I have two presses. I envision that there's two people printing. One. I see me making books with people that won't necessarily be printed on a letterpress, but that will go together in another print process, but they don't have to wait forever for me to do this. The books that I'm making now, I asked people for manuscripts that were important things for them, for the city of Miami, much the same as you're asking me. Mm-hmm. And John Dufresne gave me flash fiction that was very much about like the stability of mental health these days. Like everybody is a little bit off, but that was a few years ago. That was before COVID. Yeah. And he gave me this stuff, and he's famous for that kind of fiction. Denise Duhamel and Maureen Seaton are two poets. Maureen is no longer with us, although she'll always be with me, and she'll always be with a lot of people who read her stuff. And they gave me a feminist document. So I immediately called a woman I went to grad school, Mary Mom, to be part of this thing with me, because I'm still just a boy. And I didn't want to screw up a feminist document with some ridiculous lack of understanding. So she made art with me, although she made it with all the colors in the rainbow, and I can only print one color at a time. So we had to kind of do some negotiation. But also, she did bring up a couple points that I was kind of like blind to. So, and I was grateful for her to be part of that. That book was at the Minnesota Center for Book Arts MCBA biennial. It was a semifinalist. Mm-hmm. I got to call all those guys and say, you guys are on display in Minneapolis at one of the greatest book centers in the country. And then the next book I did with Edwidge Dentacad, and a friend of mine who I taught at with two different schools, John Ermer, he helped me with the timeline that I made. And Edwidge gave me a very tough to read essay, which is in her current book of essays. And I had to make something for someone who I truly love. Because way back when I read that book to understand those Haitian boys, I kept reading Edwidge. And when she wrote Brother, I'm Dying, I realized that the people who were interviewing didn't read the books. And she is a MacArthur Fellow, mm-hmm. and she's a National Book Award winner. And the books that she writes are to help everybody understand. So that book was also at the MCBA prize. And that's one of the two books that went into the Met. And the other book was a book I did at the Jaffe, and that was Michael Heddick, John Dufresne, Yadi Peralta, Laura Tan, and me. And I made the whole book kind of conceptually at the Anderson Center in Red Wing, Minnesota, where I went 7 times. So it was a home away from home, a return to the Midwest, an opportunity to play with nice kids like me, who were not my age, but they were people who were engaged on the same level. And that after that is when I came down and all of us started talking about sweat. And so now a lot of people are collaborating. And I think that collaboration is another broadcast, aside from look at me, I'm in this show in this gallery. It's a way to kind of create a group that has similar shared interests, that has a unity that rises above a lot of other things. Yeah. It lets people be together when it doesn't seem like anybody can be together.
It's the way to connect.
Yeah. And
yeah.
I mean,
even if you have difference of opinion.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
And it happens like organically, but I made a print with Jonathan Scoffrey the first time or the second time I was at the Anderson Center, and he was graduating from the University, U of M, mm-hmm. but not University of Miami, University of Minnesota. And he was getting out of their master's program. All his teachers were all my friends. I made another print with him a few months ago, and that print was for University of Miami Center for Black Global Studies. And Donette Francis picked his book to make a broadsheet. So 10 years apart and 1,600 miles apart, these same people circled into my life. And I was being a printer. I was also being a printmaker. But I think the idea that someone who helps people lift their voices has a lot to do with being a printer.
Mm-hmm.
The press is a machine, but the people who come in here, who I print with, they're spreading good news. Sometimes they're spreading bad news, but in a way that you can process it and learn from it. So I don't have so many answers as I do questions, but the printing is a way for me to offer something of value as I see it.
Yeah. What's your advice for aspiring young artists, young students, young people? Anything that you wish you were told when you were starting out?
Wow.
I'm collecting advice from all of you.
Yeah. I think that you should study what you want to study.
Yeah.
I think that you should go to school for free.
Yeah.
There are schools that have their entire curriculum online for people who learn that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I have kids that have done that, and they're brilliant. If you get straight A's, that still works pretty good. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of work working as a gardener and going to school part-time too. But learning how to garden taught me about different cycles and different time frames. And it also taught me about other people. And it also taught me that if you want to grow marigolds in the winter, that's a nice dream, but it's never going to work because they only grow in the summer. So if you travel, the things that are true in Miami probably aren't even true on other planets. But if you do something in the Midwest or the Far West or California or the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, everybody has their ways, and there are things that overlap. Being active is always good. So I did Tai Chi and Kung Fu. Before that, I did karate. I took fencing in college. I was the intramural fencing champion.
You were.
And my coach hated me because I had a job, and he wanted me to quit my job, but I just kept making bagels. So that went out the window. And I left my swords in a dojo, and then they were gone. But now I have more swords, and we have sword forms in Tai Chi, and they're wonderful.
This becomes the best part. You show me around?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Another one of those times when things circle around. Here, there will always be consequences. Was printed by Rick Griffith at Matter Design.
Mm-hmm.
He's from Denver, but I was in a Waze Goose, which is a goofy name that printers gave to a huge conference of printers from all over the world, and he was my teacher for a class. And that was just a month ago.
Can you tell me about these?
These here are all Midwest writers and printers.
All Midwest.
I did the first batch, and the first batch was Miami writers, and I called them Miami 100s. And I went to Minnesota with no new work, and I brought all the Miami 100s up and put them on the wall because I asked all my friends to give me 100 characters each. And when I did that, the man who runs the residency, Robert Hedin, a dear friend, who handed me a book by Louise Erdrich. Start at the beginning, read the first one. She's got a lot. You'll be glad you did. He says, I think you'll like this. And when I told him about the Miami 100s, he said, when are you going to do the Midwest 100s?
And you did.
And that's what I did, yeah. And there's more. The other little one is Edney Jean Joseph. He's a genius. He started out at New World, and he didn't want to make a whole lot of debt for him. And he's doing everything the way I did it, the hard way. But he's a brilliant young man. and I expect to see him in lights.
This is great.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy.
My
Chris
gosh.
Friday, another hero. She's had studios all around Miami, and she's a person who shows the love in the world on a very powerful level.
Oh my gosh. You have your, so is there a rhyme or reason to the organization here?
It kind of changes. I had to make new cards because someone yelled at me because I don't have cards. So I did. And the last time I made them gray and black and brown and tan. And I realized I have all these great colors. Let me live it up. And then the type is right there too. And
I love these.
Yeah. And the one next to it is actually, it's called a chromatic type. And it's 2 separate letters.
This one?
Yeah. And it gives you 3 colors when you use them. Ironically, the woman who runs the company is Virgin Wood type. Her name isn't Virgin, but her company is. And so we became friends early on. And she gave me a box full of type so I could print with kids in the very beginning. And that great big picture up here is Amos Kennedy. And he gave me that when I visited him the first time in Detroit. I said to the woman at Signal Return who got a Night Arts grant, well, Amos is around here. She says, you should go visit him. And I said, I've never met him. I know his work. And she gave me his phone number, and I went over there. And he was in what used to be an assembly plant for Detroit way back in the day. And he answered all my questions. He gave me a list of places to go. I asked him, where do you get ink? And he went into the shelves of his huge shop and gave me a giant box full of ink. And I was on my way from Miami to Minneapolis at the time, so I just put it in the back of the truck. But I left that place with probably 100 pounds of goodies and all the information he could give me. I have never stopped learning from Amos Kennedy. This was part of a group that came from a residency in Portland, Oregon. And this is one of the prints that went with that whole body of work. And I did 13 views of Mount Hood. And this is kind of an homage to Hokusai and Hiroshige, who made way more. I'm a slacker when it comes to those guys. And these words here, if I had high hopes, those words, I drew at 6 and eventually became an artist. By 50, I was noticed, but no work before age 70 was great. At 73, I began to grasp the structure of nature. When I am 86, my knowledge will grow. So by 90, I will perceive nature's ethos. Past 100, every dot and stroke I paint will be alive.
I love that.
I love that too.
I love that.
And that's straight out of Hokusai's mouth. The picture next to it is the house that used to be next door to me. And I also make pictures of things that are going away. And that's a woodcut print that actually showed at the CAS way back then. Yeah, way back then. The two here, this is kind of like my badass corner. We love you, don't cry, sorrow eats time, be patient, time eats sorrow. That's Louise Erdrich.
Can you tell me about this machine?
This is a 1949 Vandercook 4 proof press.
My gosh, what a beauty.
And when you turn it on, you can put a piece of paper here and put something in the form.
Let's see.
And turn the crank. And if there was anything on this plate, it would print here.
It would just print that, yeah.
But I'm going to print for you on the other press, which...
Okay, this is a treat because we're getting demo here.
And this I have to put ink on, and I have to put my my apron back on.
What is this?
This whole wall,
like a collection.
Those are my grandkids, but they were things that I did, each one, and I had to print like 6 or 8 times to overlay the colors. The first one I printed was one like the giraffe.
Yeah.
And the giraffe I printed for Old Miami because they wanted a postcard, and they wanted me to make it postcard size. But you can see the letters are way too big to fit on a postcard.
Oh,
So I told them what I can do is I can put this little, and you can put the kids' words on the other side. They sent me blind prompts, so I had no idea. I got crown, cupcake, rain.
I see them all.
Yeah, and I had to make the art to go with. These came from the Ways Goose. This is a self-portrait.
You see? Wow.
And that's all stuff that came from me, one way or the other. These are people, this came to me through Nadej Green. These came to me because I know Nadej and because I'm part of a bigger community than what I grew up in.
Yeah.
These are Little Haiti, and I print every day before Mother's Day because Fountainhead residency, Catherine Mikesell, is one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. But I gained great power and love from her when her daughter ended up in my classroom. And she took this kid all over the world to every museum that you could ever look at. And then she got in my class and she got to make stuff, but she was making her own stuff. And she told her mom, I have to have an art station in my room. So ever since then, we have been more close than we were before. And she does so many things for so many people. I could talk for another hour just about that. But every day before Mother's Day, I print something for Mother's Day because my mom was my true north, always. And she still is.
You do this all the time. It's been a tradition now.
Yeah. Well, I do it once and then I keep doing it. Same with the Pam prints. I did it once and they liked it. And so I just kept doing it.
I love these.
And they do those for the Jam at Pam, which is a program that raises money for the kids.
You were working on something when I got here. What were you working on?
This is an edition of books. Before they have covers, they don't look like much.
Yeah.
But once they get covers.
I just love the thread.
Yeah, and that's all going to get covered up. Actually, probably about the time you leave.
I just love the skeleton of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. This represents roughly 60 hours.
What?
Of meditation.
Yeah.
And it's just sewing. But my mom sewed. My sister, who calls me every day, has sewed almost every day her life. And when I'm sewing, I'm totally in my happy place. No matter how rotten I start, when I'm sewing for a while,
does it automatically put you in the best mood?
It's just like it's like meditation. It's just such a great thing.
What's this book? This is very interesting.
This book is made by all the time that I went up north. I never just went up north. I went up north and went to all the neighborhoods. This is called The Handmade Path. And this book was put together by a woman named Amanda Dagener and Lou Jingren and Peng Wu. And the cover is alphabet paper.
It looks so delicate.
Amanda started Cave Paper in the basement of a 100-year-old building. And it was named Cave Paper because it looked like the place was a cave. And she only hired interns in the summer, and she didn't pay us. But
oh my God.
This book is covered in Cave Paper. That was my payment.
Can I touch it?
Of course.
It feels wild.
It feels like came from something that was alive.
Yeah.
And so this is beautiful paper.
It's wild.
And this book is also in the Met. But I mean, everything in here is, even though some of it's really rough, these are people I love.
Yeah.
You know, these are stories that have to be told. So Amanda put all these people in the book, I think 50 from the United States, and her colleague put in 50 from China. And lo and behold, my chicken scratch is in here too. And this is she's going to be at the book fair.
This is beautiful. I love the letters with
C.B. Sherlock. She's another dear friend, one of my teachers.
Crazy.
This person here, Regular Roussel, bought my press from Gaylord Shanalik, who's another mentor. And she made the group project manifesto over there.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm giving you my press, but you have to get it out of my basement.
How big was it? There it is.
1949.
Oh my gosh.
She gave me the Vandercook because she said, I know you'll use it with other people. And when I moved it the last time, I didn't really have a home for it. Another fairy godmother, another person who's been in my life from University of Miami, Chris Ingalls, stored it in her warehouse for a year or two until this place was finished. And so Gaylord, who wrote that press up there, is this press right here. Gaylord sold it to Regula for $300. Regula gave it to me. I shipped it to Chris. Chris stored it in her warehouse, and her guys brought it over here in 2017 after I got the Night Arts Challenge grant.
Oh my God.
And that was practically the only thing in here, and it was in pieces. And this one came from the Anderson Center, but it didn't belong to the Anderson Center. And
this looks heavy.
This one is very heavy. This is more than that one. This is like 1,600 pounds. And actually, if I haven't missed anything, this is a kid that used to be in my room.
This looks like games. All these blocks. These are letters?
This is called furniture. This is what you use to lock up stuff in the press.
Oh.
So this is the press that I'm going to print on. I just had to put ink on it. And my important mission today, aside from giving you the smell of ink in this room,
yes,
these very important items are for my grandkids to make Christmas cards this weekend. And I'm going to print stars and Santas in gold and silver so they can cut them up and make cards.
I love it.
For their grandparents.
I love that you're doing that.
I send mail every chance I get.
Gosh.
Actually, I'm sending stuff out today. 2 people I know from high school are getting this.
Ooh, let's see. That's beautiful.
I made the paper. I made the print.
It looks stunning. I hope the camera gives.
I didn't write the words. And I printed this at the Anderson Center in Red Wing.
Really?
So that's kind of like my home away from home. Every time I talk to Robert, he asks me when I'm coming back. And I made this out of my blue jeans too. Yeah. Which, now that I mostly wear shorts, I don't wear blue jeans as much. But all the time I was in school, that's about all I wore.
And this is with Brian Reedy?
This show was in the airport, Miami Airport. And I'll send you the link online and you can put it in with the other stuff.
Yes.
This is Brian's stuff. Brian is my hero. This is my stuff. And so Brian and I went from
what a good collab.
Key West to the Northwest United States. Brian went from the Paleozoic era into outer space. This was a show that was at the Frost Museum. And this is the work that's on the wall over there. And this is like, storytelling isn't always writing.
No.
And that was 2 weeks before that picture was started. There was Latin music, kids laughing, 15 or 20 people, all the time outside, barbecue smoke, cooking. And they tore that thing down overnight when they got rid of all the little apartments in Coconut Grove and the cottages. And now they're doing it again. And I will be making a book about that as well. If you grow up in Michigan, this is what Michigan looks like. This is a map of Michigan.
That's the map.
And it looks like a mitten.
Yeah.
And this is where Sleeping Bear Dunes is. And this is the most beautiful place in the world. This is where this is where I grew up, and this is where I went to school. So we can't help it. We do that. And this story is a story of a bunch of people from Michigan and one person that hadn't gone to Michigan, and they went with me.
Well, you can see right here, Miami's different.
Yeah, Miami is different.
It certainly is.
That's, you know, the kids taught me about extra. And the fact that there's still ink in here,
Yeah,
just delights me. That Amos is still hooking me up.
this is the coolest. We get a demo.
And I have newer ink that does the same thing, but this one is better than the new one, which costs way more.
Is it difficult?
It's not a process that is so complex that someone couldn't learn, which is ironic because the first time I had an opportunity to print, the woman who was going to let me print at Oregon College of Art and Craft, I told her, I can't do that. I don't want to break it. And she goes, don't be an idiot. You can do this. And I said, no. So I didn't. And we're still friends. And she laughs at me. She printed my cards the first time. And she did a wonderful job. And I probably could have done an okay job too.
This is crazy. I've never seen this done.
Well, so these are the rollers. The rollers carry the ink. The ink has to distribute on the rollers so that it's pretty consistent. I'm only putting like 1,000th of an inch on the plate or the little things that I'm printing. And once it gets to that point,
look at this. Look at how it spreads.
Yeah, and those distribution rollers are what move it around, and then the bottom rollers are all rubber, and they have a soft surface, and the soft surface goes over the form. I really wanted to print both colors. And then when it's on there, once it gets distributed, then I'll roll it up over this, and then I'll put a piece of paper in there. And I'll put a packing sheet underneath it. And the packing sheet gives you enough pressure. And it takes a little bit to get one going.
How hard is it to clean these things?
You know, I have a friend. He's kind of a new friend. His name is Ernst. He's in California. He's famous. I don't think he knows how famous he is. He moved here from Germany. He learned how to work with machines in Germany. And I don't think he learned about letterpress until he came to California. But he spent 12 hours with me with this press when it wouldn't work before I started printing that book. 6 hours, 2 days in a row. And at the end of the second day, everything came together and we were doing it on FaceTime.
On FaceTime?
I had to be with the phone and the hands, and he was the brains.
What?
Yeah. And he did it.
How expensive are the parts? Is it like cars?
Parts are expensive. And, you know, like this machine is from the 1950s. Early 50s.
Early 50s, my gosh.
And the other machine is from the 40s. So you can see there's a lot of ink on here.
Yeah.
And this is designed just for kids. But I promised at least one grown-up that I would bring them enough for her child to make something. And the chunks in here,
look at that,
are what's making that extra noise. Now, you don't want to get too close to this because if this bed goes underneath the press and comes back out.
Okay.
And if that bed catches you, it weighs 800 pounds, it would ruin your day.
Oh my gosh. Oh, this is a treat. Wow. Amazing. Look at the Florida.
These are for Florida kids. There's 3 Floridas in there.
Oh, wow.
And Santa's stepping on one of them. Look at that. Love that.
That's the coolest.
I wasn't planning on that. And now, because I'm lazy and smart people taught me this, I'm putting the other end too. That's the chunks that's making that noise.
Did it? Oh.
That's it.
Whoa.
And this is the drying rack.
Right here.
Normally, I never operate the press without, watch out, without loud music. It's kind of a tradition.
What music do you listen to? Do you have
Everything.
a favorite?
I'm constantly looking for new music.
Really?
I grew up in the 60s. And so
Do you have a favorite band?
everyone that I heard, I love music.
I know, when they ask me the same thing, I can't.
When I found out about Gypsy Kings when I moved to Florida, well, when I moved to Miami, I asked everybody, but I asked the women, and the women would tell me what books they read and what music they like. The guys are kind of in another world. So I read Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Isabel Allende, and I asked everyone at UM, what should I read to give me the vibe? And then a wonderful young woman told me about Gypsy Kings, and that blew my mind. And so, like all the music is a story too.
Oh, I love it with the pink and the gold.
Yeah.
That's insane. I love that.
And the Renaissance, when they were gilding things, they would paint everything a dark red and then put the gold leaf over the top.
I hear we're going into another Gilded Age. What do you think of that?
I think
we
that
might have trillionaires soon.
Some of us will be gilded and some of us will not.
Yes.
I fall to gold ink. I will have the illusion of grandeur, if not grandeur. And if you remind me, I'll give you a postcard I made that honors my ancestors. My great-grandfather was a Native American. And I did that. I printed the gold and the red together of a gold coin that is a $20 gold piece that was released a couple of years ago. And it's, I think, the first coin, there was a gold coin that they put a Native American on. And it was a $20 gold piece, which is not something in circulation.
Just the machinery of this is so cool.
And so actually cleaning it, Ernst, the aforementioned Ernst, told me about a product that's called, it's not out, Magic Cleaner. And it's non-toxic. You clean it with a wet, heavy-duty wipe with just water on it. And then you have to clean up everything when you're done, but it comes off like magic. And I still use the other stuff, like every other cleaning, to get deep cleaning on rollers. The rollers, just the rollers, the bottom rollers that distribute everything, cost $600 to replace.
Wow.
So, but this machine was not used like to make books and stuff. This was a machine that they used. They would make the image and then shoot the stuff that came off of here, and then use those to make the multiple colors in the color process. So these would be in like an advertising office or something like that. They would use a bigger press to do the big printing. But with these are for grandkids. And I have kids' scissors, and they'll be going at this like Freddy Krueger. So that's why I'm printing extras.
Tom, I could talk to you all day. And you've been so generous with your time, and we even got a demo. I just want to thank you so much.
You can smell the ink now, right?
I could totally smell the ink.
I hope everybody can smell the ink. And do come. We'll do this again.
Well, I'm going to leave Tom's information down in the description. You could contact him. Set up a visit, because you got to see this place for yourself, and you have to see these incredible equipment, just these presses for yourself in person, because they're wild. And Tom's a bookman.